And we're back. Well, he's not really my boss, but he can get me fired. Wick Rowland runs this little outfit called Colorado Public Television. I thought I'd talk to him about the latest in NPR and other cash grabs from the federal government. Thanks for coming.
It's good to be here, John, as always.
How are things in Colorado Public Television?
Well, things are good at the station. We've, as with all other public media licensees, we've had our tough times in the last couple of years. Yes,
it's been hard to fundraise. Is that
you got it. And of course, with all the nonprofit community generally in Colorado.
Oh, it's been terrible.
Yes,
yeah.
But it hasn't been terrible. It's been tough.
No, actually, and to your credit, there's actually been a lot of behind-the-scenes things that had to happen with a switch over to digital, which nobody cares about, but you had to go off and fundraise and get all the right that.
That's right.
And now you've got 4 channels to play with if you're getting us over broadcast.
Well, we have 3 channels on air now, 12, 1, 2, and 3. And 2 of those are locally programmed, and the third is the Megahertz Worldview, which is turning out to be just a great service to the community as well.
Because you don't air anything that's not worthwhile. So business is good.
I'm not saying anything.
Not saying anything. It's good being the token conservative. It's job security, really. It's still a go. How much money do we here at Channel 12 get from the feds?
About $600,000 of a $4 million budget. So
can I have a raise?
15%. Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
Double what you got. Do we need it? What would happen if they said, you know what, this is not a core governmental function to help yahoos like Wick Rowland out in Colorado. We need to balance a budget. How do you tell people that given a $1 trillion shortfall, $14 trillion debt that we've got, unfunded mandates that are almost $100 trillion, that this is really what the federal government should be doing?
There are 3 or 4 ways of dealing with that. First of all, the federal funding for public broadcasting is less than $500 million. It's $450 million. It's a grain of sand on the federal budget beach.
Yes, but we have so many grains of sand on the federal budget beach. They all together make a nice little play box.
No, they don't, actually. All that discretionary funding doesn't add up to nearly. It's all the entitlement programs. That's where the real crunch is going to come.
So am I hearing that the president and CEO of Channel 12 is saying we really need to cut these entitlement programs?
We're going to have to look at them across the board, but we have to be realistic about where you're really going to save the money. Symbolic cutting of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is not going to solve anybody's problem, and those who are spending a lot of time and energy on it are really wasting their and the taxpayers' time. I think we need to really get on with it.
But what an odd argument, saying it's just $5 million, or it's just $50 million, whatever it is. It's a tiny thing. Isn't there something reasonable to say, wait a second, this is taxpayer money going to television in an era where we have more television than we know what to do with?
Well, that's the problem. That whole argument is based on we have a free and open marketplace that provides everything that we want from the electronic media, and the answer is that we don't do that. That is not the case. There is need for an alternative to marketplace-based programming that is done in the commercial world. That's the entire concept behind public service broadcasting is that there needs to be a safe haven, something that's protected from ratings and circulation figures.
All right, I understand the argument, but most PBS, and I think that's what makes this station very unique. I remember watching this in college back when you had Teletoons and weird videos at night, is that you've got a lot of homegrown programming here, from this program to CIO to Studio, I could go on forever. Most of PBS is a franchise service. You hook up with PBS, you get your Sesame Street and Curious George, which, by the way, my kids like.
I won't tell anybody.
Yeah. By the way, they wanted me to lobby. Where's Mr. Rogers? Bring him back. I would rather. All right. But you know what I mean. You get the Masterpiece Theater, you get Nova, you get this, you get that, and so it's. There's nothing.
Well, I want to be careful, because in this current debate, one of the things that has been is kind of left aside or just not understood is the funding from CPB, the federal government funding through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, isn't just for the stations. It also underwrites very clearly some of the operations of both PBS and NPR as national network interconnection systems and the national programming, much of which you enjoy on our air and on other stations' air as well too. So regardless of how much local programming other stations do or don't do, they are carrying a lot of programming that is ultimately in large part funded by the federal funds. By statute, CPB is responsible for funding those national programs. So the loss of CPB money has a bigger ramification than just taking away the budget for us. The other thing that it would do is it would seriously undermine the health of many of the smaller public radio stations around the country and in the state as well too.
The public radio stations,
yes.
they would be hurt?
Yes.
The little commie stations would have to go out and raise some of their own money. All right, let's talk about
community
this.
is not communist.
It is when it takes my money without asking for it. So let's. I mean,
but the government takes your money without asking you for
so
all kinds of things.
In other words, the government rapes us so often that more for something that's good is okay.
I don't see it as rape. We have disagreements in the society about what tax money should go for. We have all kinds of disputes about defense, about education, about the environment, about basic research and science, all of those sorts of things. You and I will have different views about it, but on April 15th we pay our taxes, and we.
Well, not if you have my accountant. We don't pay our taxes.
We expect our representative government then to figure out how to deploy those resources.
I understand that, but Congressman Lambert down in the 5th Congressional has come up with a bill that only targets NPR, saying money shouldn't go to NPR. And what I see with NPR and NPR affiliated stations, I mean, I think of KGNU up in Boulder, which, by the way, is a great community station. It represents the community well. It is overwhelmingly intellectual, elitist, liberal, and not much else. That being said, NPR has a bias, and we ought to be open to that. NPR has a bias.
Bias is in the eyes of the beholder.
But here's the difference. Right. We have now a government-funded news source. And that's, for me, ideologically, a scary thing, that government is funding an organization that's going to report on government. Now, sitting where you sit here in public television, maybe NPR doesn't look liberal to you. Maybe Fox News looks conservative to you. It
just doesn't look fair and balanced.
All right. Well, let me tell you, NPR doesn't look fair and balanced. How would you feel if Fox News was receiving the money instead of NPR? Would you still be, if they had the same?
John, we have you on our air.
You have me. Yeah, but you're not getting any federal money from me. But no, understand my point.
I do.
Let me draw this out, and then tell me I'm wrong. So if it would be wrong to subsidize Fox News, and it would be wrong to subsidize Fox News, why is it okay to subsidize NPR?
It would be wrong if Fox News was it continued to be a for-profit, privately held corporation with share interests for stockholders.
What if? Let's assume it wasn't. Let's say I'm just talking about content.
Right.
Let's assume that it was a not-for-profit, and it didn't have shareholders, but it still had the same bent as it does now. Would it be okay if the money got switched over there? Would you be as firm in your defense if ideologically they were doing that?
It's not clear to me that it would be what it is if it were in a nonprofit mode. See, that's
a nice political answer. Well, I'm saying that if its news department was as biased as Fox is, or at least as biased as most people in NPR think Fox is, would you still be saying this is a good use of our tax money?
I would if it were in a nonprofit environment, as it would have to be in order to receive those funds and have the tax exemptions that its donors would get. But if it did that, it would not be what it is. I'm very sure it would be much more middle of the road than it is now, by virtue of the checks and balances.
Let me tell you, NPR is nothing like middle of the road.
You know, it's really interesting how many conservative commentators have been coming around, and particularly in this most recent set of issues, saying, you know, NPR isn't quite as leftist as we used to say it was. David Brooks and others just recently have been saying these sorts of things on national air and writing them. So I'm not certain I accept that sort of premise that national public radio is this bastion of leftism.
One of the things that NPR always says, and I kind of heard it from you as well, is we get so little money from the feds. We get so little. Only 5% of our budget really comes from the federal government. Are you telling me that NPR is not capable of doing fundraising and getting their own 5, even having a few commercials or more sponsors to get that 5%?
I think the figures about the impact of the federal money on public radio have been misrepresented in a lot of ways. In fact, the 25% of the CPB money goes to public radio, and it works its way through the system back into NPR through dues from the local stations. So that 5% figure is not quite accurate. But independently of that, I don't think that there is any particular problem with the notion that there should be some federal subvention, some tax-based subvention for a public service media enterprise, whether it's in radio or television. Every other advanced society, every other advanced democracy in the world.
Not the Euro look again.
Australia,
every
New Zealand,
advanced
Japan.
Organization. Japan.
Every society.
So every government that has
Yes.
a much more activist role in their economy has a news organization that it's paid for.
Or every other government that looked at radio and television from the outset as being a cultural enterprise and not an enterprise designed to deliver eyeballs and ears to advertisers. That's the primary problem in the United States.
But we have radio stations, one down in the Springs, that is 100% funded by contributions from listeners. What I'm concerned about.
I'm not sure which station you're talking about.
I'm forgetting the classical music station. I'm blanking out.
Oh, the one up in Manitou Springs, yeah.
But isn't there a legitimate worry when a government owns a news service?
It doesn't own it. That's the point. There are checks and balances.
They are paying, as you said, 25% of it, or whatever number you want to use.
Indirectly through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And
that makes it better?
It does, actually. Oh, sure, because you wouldn't want it funding directly out of a cabinet agency. No, that would not be acceptable. That would be a Ministry of Communications approach. And that we wouldn't accept.
Tight on time. There's been some interesting little undercover work done. The president of NPR finally stepped down, and we've got that wonderful tape of a fake donor hearing what he wanted to hear. Does that tell you that there's something going on when it comes to NPR?
No,
or does it bother you at all?
It's actually a tragedy about NPR because I think it actually had beginning to really dig itself in a good way as a journalistic institution, both nationally and internationally. It has replaced much of what was lost in commercial radio in that way very, very, very well. So I'm very sorry to see Vivian Schiller go. I wish that they had been able to handle this sort of thing. Then the issue with Ron Schiller, no relation, and this fake tape thing, that is 2 hours of conversation compressed into 10 minutes and very, very smarmily edited.
Well, I kind of like that. Now you're speaking my language.
You can't claim to be an investigative journalist and do the work that way.
All right. Last thing, just 30 seconds. Let me say this. Let me say it to you. If you don't support this station, you're making a mistake. Even though you're a communist, you're a nice communist, but the kind of programming that comes here on Colorado Public Television, you won't see on any other station, and it's worth, heck, if I give $20, and I do, and not 21, but 20, it's worthwhile. Wick, thank you for being here.
John,
thank you so much.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about these matters.
Yeah, please don't fire me. Tell a friend about the Independence Institute, and we'll see you next week.